Hi, and welcome to Cecil TV. I'm Doug Donnelly, and in this special segment, we further discuss the ongoing issue of funding for Cecil County Public Schools. It is my hope, both in talking to our guests in this interview and in our recent interview with Council President Jackie Gregory, to make some of this complex matter more understandable to members of the public who haven't taken a deep dive into the numbers and may be unfamiliar with the educational aspects of this issue. So, I'd like to welcome Denise Sopa, CCPS Chief Financial Officer, and Dr. Jenni Hammer, Associate Superintendent of Educational Services. Thanks to both of you for being here. And let's begin.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for the invite.
The need for increased funding from the county for CCPS has been attributed to inflation, the end of COVID money, blueprint requirements, as well as the flat maintenance of effort funding from the county for the last 3 years. These factors are real and can be quantified with a little work, but beyond these mostly numerical challenges, society, home life, and economics impact the readiness of students to thrive in school. What changes in the student body are causing instructional or disciplinary challenges that lead to increased costs?
Doug, thanks for asking that question. And I agree with you that your synopsis of the challenges that we are facing right now for this funding are absolutely accurate, but beyond the numbers are the increased needs of our special populations of students. In our recent budget presentation in January, we shared some startling data regarding our students with disabilities, as well as our English learners and our students coming from poverty. We have seen increases in each one of these special populations over the last 10 years. We have currently around 2,800 students who have disabilities ranging from minor speech needs to really significant behavioral and cognitive needs that have to be met in a variety of different settings. We also have seen a significant increase. We have close to 400 students right now across our 29 schools that English is their second language. Some of them do not speak English at all. And so we have a small and mighty staff of multilingual teachers who go out into schools and support those students as they are learning the language of English. And also the biggest one that we see a challenge with are students who are living in poverty, who are designated through our free and reduced meals numbers. We have seen a variety of different challenges that are typical and research-based as a student is indicated with poverty. It's manifesting in our classrooms behaviorally, and I've heard repeatedly teachers coming forward with testimony at county council meetings, at Board of Education meetings, on social media about the challenges they're facing. Recently, I believe in 2022, the health department put together a community health assessment for Cecil County. And in that health assessment, one of the features of it was ACEs. If you're not familiar with an ACE is, it is an adverse childhood experience. So Cecil County's ACEs scores were amongst the highest in the state. Likewise, there were several other metrics of community health that were of extreme concern in Cecil County, including drug-related deaths, overdoses, domestic violence protective orders, and one of the two additional things that are of most concern, we have a lot of grandparents in Cecil County who are raising their grandchildren. And substance-exposed newborns are something that we're seeing directly in our classrooms. Those are students or children who are born addicted to something. And that substance can be anything from a drug, it could be alcohol, it could be even nicotine, and it impacts a child's development and their wiring. What I will tell you is that Cecil County Public Schools is armed and prepared to with the strategies to support these intensive needs that we're seeing in our classrooms. These needs manifest in everything from behavior dysregulation students just can't control how to do school. And it's really showing itself in our elementary schools, that our schools are working really hard to try to help students get themselves regulated so that they can engage in learning and their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. That's the most important thing. So yeah, we're seeing really significant challenges as a result of our community needs, to be honest.
Good. Thank you. Next, in our interview with Council President Jackie Gregory, she raised some questions about how ESSER funds, or the money received by CCPS during the pandemic, were used. Specifically, she questioned how much of this money was used in the classroom. And since we should be focused on the current circumstances, she also said that since sports, AP charges, and gifted and talented programs were not funded by ESSER, they should not be on the chopping block, as she called it. Can you give us a sense of how ESSER funds were used in the classroom and elsewhere, and explain how their absence now threatens these programs?
Sure. She's correct. Those things are not funded by ESSER, and that's because there are very specific requirements for what could be funded by ESSER, and we had to follow those rules with the receiving each of those grants. So in March 2020, right when the pandemic hit, we received ESSER 1 funding, which was about $3.1 million. And the allowable uses for that grant were for PPE and cleaning supplies, to keep people safe, to keep buildings clean, to purchase hardware and technology. You know, we were now moving to a remote environment. Children had to be able to access their education from home. Staff members had to be able to provide this education from home. Everyone else doing their jobs had to be able to learn to work remotely and have the tools to do so. So there was some money spent on some connectivity, some hardware, and subscriptions to make that happen. And that's really how ESSER 1 was spent, that $3.1 million on those things. ESSER 2 came along about April of 2021. It was about $12.4 million. Again, it was to be used to address learning loss and safety in the buildings, and working with students and staffing and maintaining the staffing to assist students. So again, that money all was spent on the staffing that we already had to keep them in our buildings, the technology, the hardware and subscriptions. You'll see a lot when we do our, as we've been doing our FY25 budget presentations, a lot of technology that's come back into the unrestricted budget because it was being funded by ESSER, because that's exactly what we were supposed to do with ESSER, was to make remote learning functional and feasible. ESSER 3 came along in August of mid-2021. We knew ESSER 3 was coming, and ESSER 3 was a big one because this was the point in time going into 2022 where our state funding was being reduced. We weren't getting an increase in state funding. We knew we were receiving MOE funding from the county, and we had about 100 plus staff members on the chopping block for FY22 that we knew we were not going to be able to afford in the FY22 budget. ESSER 3 came along. It ended up being about $27.8 million over 3 years. And very specifically in the legislation for ESSER, it states that this money could be used to avoid layoffs, to address learning loss. And all of ESSER 3, for the most part, was used on staffing, and it was maintaining staffing. If you look at our staffing history from 2014 to the present, we are flat staffing. For a brief period of time, I believe it was 22, we did add some staffing in the way of student support technicians to provide additional support for children coming back to face-to-face learning from COVID. But then we phased out some other positions to kind of get us back to a level playing field of where we started with staffing. So we did not increase staffing. We paid for the staffing that we had so that we did not have to let people go, so that we could continue to address the needs of our students as they came back from COVID. So the comment about the fact that the things that we're looking to cut are not the things that were in ESSER, you know, since we're losing the ESSER and the LEADS funding, what we need to do is look at that funding and say, okay, here's the things that we paid for with this grant money. So we have to decide what's essential, and if it's essential, it needs to come back into our unrestricted budget. And if it's not essential, then we don't put it back in the budget at all. Well, all of those staff members were considering to be essential, and a lot of the technology that was there were considering to be essential. You know, we have started using these technologies and need to continue using these technologies. So in order to be able to afford everything, you have to start to look at what are the things that Not that we're saying they're not wonderful things, that sports aren't, wonderful, and that the fine arts, those are not anything that anybody wants to cut. But at some point, when over 80% of your budget is salaries and fixed charges, you have to start to say, what's not a blueprint requirement that's not addressing our class size and our student need, and where can we start to chip away at some of these dollar items that we need to address this $21 million deficit that we have.
Doug, it also should be noted that each one of these ESSER plans were developed here in Cecil County, and all of them were submitted to the Maryland State Department of Education and were approved and have been monitored throughout their implementation.
Good. Thanks. Next question. The Maryland Blueprint for Education is a wide-ranging, mandated set of requirements that is challenging school systems across the state. In particular, it forces a reallocation of teaching staff and resources to schools with student populations that are deemed as having more needs. As it is implemented in the upcoming years, what will be needed to ensure that all students in the system continue to receive a high-quality education?
So that's true. Blueprint does require us to have 75% of the funding follow the student to the school level. We've always staffed for students with disabilities or students who speak English as a second language. We've always provided staffing and supports based on needs, so based on service hours. So if I'm a student with a disability, the number of service hours, the type of supports I receive, we've provided that staffing and those supports for those buildings. Blueprint is a little bit different because the money is going to be allocated by number of students, not by service hours. So that's going to look a little bit different. So for example, if I have 10 students in building A that have a mild learning disability that don't have as many intense needs on their IEPs, and then in building B, I have 5 students diagnosed with autism who require occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech, I would argue that those 5 students will cost more to educate, to meet their needs and address their IEP goals than the students in school A. However, according to Blueprint, we'll be required to allocate more funding to school A based on number of students. So there's going to be a challenge there. There's going to be a challenge in looking at where some of our most tenured staff members are. For example, you have 40 pre-K students in this building and 40 pre-K students in this building, 2 pre-K teachers and 2 pre-K paras in each building. But if you've got really tenured, seasoned teachers in building A versus building B, you're going to be spending more money there. So it's really some challenges for us to look through. Our goal is always to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. And we're going to be required. It was originally FY25. It's pushed back now to FY26, where we need to make sure that we're budgeting at the school level. So we've always reported at the school level. We've never always had to budget all of those things at the school level. So it will be a shifting in resources, and those schools that have students with more identified needs, so a higher population of students with disabilities, a higher population of students who speak English as a second language, a higher population of students who come from poverty, will receive more funding. And so we will have to look at how we can allocate our resources so that we are still providing the same high quality education for students in schools that don't have those higher special populations.
Good. In her interview, Jackie Gregory said that a large CCPS fund balance, which is currently at $18 million, is an indication that the schools are not underfunded. Is this how we should be looking at the fund balance?
So I will tell you, if you look at our fund balance from FY18 through FY23, because it's reported at the end of a fiscal year, it's relatively flat. At the end of 2020, our fund balance had dipped so low, it was below the 5% threshold that is our board policy, that our board had to come back together and revise the policy to make it a 2% threshold because there was not enough in the fund balance to meet the board policy of 5%. So that was at the end of 2020. 2021 came along, and at the end of 2021, we did add to the fund balance because no one could have predicted when we were planning our 21 budget, right, in the spring of 2020, as the pandemic was happening, Nobody predicted what FY21 would look like. Nobody predicted that we would not be back to face-to-face learning that quickly, that our sporting events and our fine arts events and all the things that we budgeted for that we planned would happen didn't happen like they should because of COVID. So at the end of 2021, there was an increase to our fund balance, and that was simply because of the pandemic and not being able to have the face-to-face things that we normally have. The other thing that happened in 2021 that brought the fund balance back to where it had been historically is a new GASB pronouncement. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board's GASB 84 stated that we had to start reporting our student activities funds as part of our fund balance. So student activities funds are funds that are raised by students for students, held in checking accounts at the school level. So for example, students pay for a yearbook, pay for pictures, pay for a field trip, raise money through a fundraiser, gate receipts at sporting events. Those are all held in school checking accounts. That's not our money to use to balance the operating budget. But starting in FY21, we had to start reporting that as part of our fund balance. So you'll see starting in FY21 that is part of our fund balance, as part of our assigned fund balance. And so that was another increase in 21 that really brought it back up to where it had been historically. I would tell you that our fund balance has always been used to fund some, emergency repairs, deferred maintenance, capital projects. And so when the fund balance kind of got back up to where it had been historically in 21 and 22, that's where you see us coming into this agreement with county government, where we actually agreed to pay for half of the secure entrances that need to be finished in some of our buildings. That had always been a county expense, not a school system expense. But in good faith, because we had this money in our fund balance, we worked with county government and we agreed to pay for half of the secure entrances in those buildings to get those secure entrances completed. You can see things like HVAC systems. We had a chiller go down this year at Rising Sun Middle, Perryville High. So right now we're looking at a chiller that we need at the School of Technology. Those are all things that we're relying on our fund balance to do.
Next question. Transparency, line item budget, year over year are terms being used by the county executive and Council President Gregory in characterizing how CCPS has presented its financial needs and requests to the county. What is the status of this reporting effort, and ultimately, who is able to see it?
Okay. That's a good question. So I do think it's interesting, that when this first came up back in the fall, MACO, which is the Maryland Association of Counties, there had been some discussion that they were looking for more transparency from their school systems. And so Dr. Lawson reached out to the county executive and the county council members and just basically said, I'm assuming since we haven't heard anything, the way that we present our budget is satisfactory, but if not, let me know what we can do better. A week later, we received a response that basically told us that we're not being transparent. We don't have a line-by-line budget, things that we hadn't heard before, which was surprising to us because we had never been requested to provide the data in that detail. Dr. Lawson responded then that while we don't have that reporting capability in our financial reporting system, that we would begin working on it. That same week, we reached out to the vendor that is utilized by the county. And again, we're told that it would take months and thousands of dollars. They could not guarantee us that they could have that reporting done for us to present the FY25 budget. So we decided that it was better for us to start working. Our technology department and our business services department started working right then and there on developing this budget. Well, actually, I should say this reporting. So what I really want to make clear, and I want to say it again, I said it in a video last week or maybe the week before, is that the statements that we do not have a line-by-line budget are false. They are false, misinformed statements. And what's really concerning to me is those statements illustrate that the people making them do not understand how the budget is developed at the county government level. They use Tyler Munis, we use Tyler Munis. Tyler Munis is an enterprise resource planning system. It is a budgeting, accounting, human resources system. It is a module. You enter your budget into the system. And I can tell you that they enter their budget the same way we do because I receive their budget emails. We report our budget to the county, and because I report it, I am on the emails that are sent out by their budget department. I know how they're entering their budget into Munis, and I can tell you we're doing it the same way. the budget is entered, managed, accounted for in that accounting system. What they're looking for is a report that looks like theirs, that gives you detail and year over year in one report. The system itself does not provide that, which is why they pay for a system and a consultant to provide those reports, whereas we started working on those reports ourselves. We've never denied that we hadn't given them line by line before because it wasn't requested. We've never denied producing them. We've asked for time to do it. And it's interesting because it should be understood that they're not easy to produce reports, or else I would think the county wouldn't spend the money they do on the platform and the consultant to provide those reports, right? If they were that easy. And then the other thing is, repeated, emails and social media posts and MPIA requests and random parking lot conversations are also not going to increase the pace at which we can create these reports. There's a big push now to get these reports for 17 through 24, and we're working on them. But I will tell you right now, our focus and our deadline is FY25. We have to have this budget ready for our board so that they can approve it, so we can submit it to the county executive, and then we can take this format that we've developed and we can work backwards. So what we've put on our website are all of the reports from Munis. Those are the budgets account by account, just not in the format that the county would like to see them. I can tell you that our board saw a draft of the new line-by-line budget report at the February 6th meeting. I can tell you that they have a line-by-line report and a year-over-year report that will be part of what they look at for their approval at our board meeting tomorrow night for our FY25 budget. And I can tell you that the county will receive a very specific line-by-line request for FY25. And as soon as they have that in hand, we're prepared. As soon as we're sure that this format is working, we're prepared to work backward and present the data for the other budgets in the same format. Keeping in mind that what they are asking for is a reporting format. We have a budget, they have a budget in Tyler Munis. It's the reporting format that we're working on.
Doug, we've been working through these challenges, and this all, we saw it start probably back in April of last year when Ms. Hornberger presented her budget, and while we were in the audience, accused our school system and Dr. Lawson in particular of malfeasance. When that happened, that was shocking to us. We were concerned about it,
especially since there was no indication until that time, and her accusations of malfeasance were based upon the fact that she accused us of using ESSER funds for staffing and saying that was one-time non-recurring money that we should not have been paying for staffing, when in essence, when you read the legislation, the allowable uses, what was approved by the state, we did not add staff members, but we were able to keep from laying off staff members. That was very allowable. But then, on the heels of that, we'll be accused of not using our fund balance to add staff members to the budget to address class size. Well, in 1 minute, we're being accused of malfeasance for doing something completely allowable with ESSER funds, and the next minute, we're being asked to use non-recurring funds to increase teachers and reduce class size. So there's really a disconnect there. It doesn't really make sense to us.
I agree. And, so knowing all of the complexities that you mentioned about Blueprint, we as a system need to make sure as educators that we educate the community about those requirements that are very fiscal in nature. I think that is one thing that we can agree with our county government on, is that the fiscal implications of Blueprint are significant, but it's education reform. And it is the law. So we have to address the law. And so we've spent time, Dr. Lawson, and ventured into a town hall meeting this past fall to try to build the community, not all of whom were supporters of public education, but we're working to continue to educate the community of the requirements of Blueprint and what it means for our community. We were grateful that all council members were present at that town hall meeting. Ms. Hornberger was not able to be in attendance. However, thanks to you, it was recorded. We then are continuing our efforts to try to bridge. There's clearly a gap here through a roundtable discussion that really didn't feel much like a roundtable discussion at all. And so at this point, as we're preparing our FY25 budget, most of our correspondence with our county government has been formal in nature. Simply that. although there seems to be a lot of chatter on social media, although much of that chatter has not, we have not been approached about having a one-on-one conversation. The CCPS is always open for any member of the public who, or county government, to have a conversation about where we are and where we're headed as a community together. I'm most concerned about, as a lifelong resident of Cecil County, I'm most concerned about the anger and aggression and misinformation that is sitting on our social media arena, especially with people who have not come to any of our Board of Education meetings and asked us questions. We are here for that. If you have a question about it, we're going to give you an honest answer. So that's concerning.
Good. Thanks for that. That was my last question. Is there anything to add, or are we good?
I think for the two of us, we're 30-year educators. This is for both of us, our 30th year with Cecil County Public Schools. We came to this a little bit differently.
We came together.
We did. We started the same year. So I was actually born and raised in Delaware. And when I was a student starting my student teaching when I was at University of Delaware, I was assigned to Cecil County. I didn't know anything about Cecil County, even living just over the border. Had no idea where I was headed or what I was getting into. Loved it. Got hired as a teacher the following year. My husband and I got married, bought a house here. So we've been residents of Cecil County for 27 years. We've raised two children. They both graduated from Cecil County Public Schools. One of them is a recent college graduate. The other one is a sophomore in college. And I attribute their success to Cecil County Public Schools. We came here for the school system. That is why we are here. And I can't tell you the number of people that I've talked to who came to Cecil County for the same reason.
Yeah, education has been central to my life as well. And, I'm born and raised here. My parents came here in the mid 60s from Pittsburgh, go Steelers. And I've been a part of the school system for my entire life and did the same thing. I chose to raise my children here and return here to give back to the gifts that were given to me by the community that supported me. And the thing that I think is so concerning about these budget attacks, I will call them, budgetary attacks, are that people's lives are at stake. People's livelihoods are at stake. Children's impact and their future is at stake in terms of the education that they're receiving. We all know, and I'm not sure everyone will agree with this, but I believe in my heart, because I've seen it over and over again as a public educator, that education is the equalizer. It makes the difference. And yesterday, this misinformation that is in the community is really what is most concerning about the idea of education being that equalizer. A flyer showed up in my mailbox yesterday, which basically said that the opponents wanted, or people wanted, to have more involvement, parent involvement in public education, which that I can agree with, and then less woke policies in our schools and sports. And I'm not sure what that means. When I looked up the word woke in Webster's dictionary, basically talks about being aware of and actively attentive to important facts and issues in your community. That's essentially what it says. So if we are woke, we need to be aware of what's happening in our community right now. Our community has needs, and our schools are armed and ready to meet those needs head on. Our school system curriculum is available at any time on our website. There are parent permission processes woven throughout our entire curriculum. And so all of those things exist to support our community. And if someone has a concern, show me, bring it to me and show me, and I'm happy to address it.
And I want to say, along with the needs that Dr. Hammer has described for our school system, we're facing a serious challenge of a $21 million deficit for FY25. That's maintaining what we have. That's addressing blueprint requirements and initiatives. And so there's a lot of chatter in the community, about, well, balance the budget, but don't cut people, don't cut teachers, and don't cut the things we think are important, like sports and fine arts. And we agree with those. We don't want to have to cut anything. But the problem remains that we have a $21 million deficit, and in a budget that is over 80% people, salaries and fixed charges, it becomes really challenging to figure out what it is you can cut to get to that number. The other thing, there's been a lot of flack given to our administrators out there, who are the most hardworking and dedicated individuals, along with all the staff members of Cecil County Public Schools. So we also hear, monitor your curriculum, make sure that the appropriate books are available, keep our schools safe. Well, every time you want us to cut an administrator, you reduce the number of people who are able to pay attention to the curriculum and the books and the safety of students. And so we're really faced with this conundrum of everybody just wants to make it work the way we are, with $21 million less next year, and you can't have it both ways.
Cecil County Public Schools will be presenting a responsible budget.
Mm-hmm.
It will be based on the needs that our community needs at this time to support our students. Bottom line.
Okay. Well, I guess that's all I have. So Denise Sopa, Dr. Hammer, we thank you very much for doing this, and we'll see how it all turns out.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you again. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.